1. Lair of the Idle Spirits. The boy picked his way carefully between large rocks and ancient debris, trying to keep up with the fleet-footed men of his village. The night air was cool and damp. Thick patches of green and gray moss covered the rocky ravine. A trickle of water ran along the bottom. Thin trees pointed up at dim stars outshone by a full moon. He turned his body sideways to get between two pillars of stone, holding his spear upright to keep it from catching. The ravine ended in a rocky wall. The men stopped and formed a circle. The boy's father waved him into the center of the circle. "My son," he said, "you have lived 12 winters. The time has come for you to leave behind the safety of the village and the ways of childhood, and learn and prove who you will be as a man." The boy's father turned and looked up at the rock face behind him. "Up there is the entrance to Suknudero, Lair of the Idle Spirits. Climb the rock, enter the cave, follow the tunnel. You will see us again on the other side. But while you are in Suknudero, you are on your own." The village chief, who was the boy's uncle, spoke next. "Leave your spear and your knife. Take nothing with you but the clothes on your body. May Great Spirit guide you." The other men in the circle, all of whom the boy had known his whole life, voiced their agreement. The boy set his spear on the ground, laid his small knife beside it. He took a deep breath and walked out of the circle. His father stood aside as he passed. He did not look back at the circle of men. That would signal weakness on his part. Instead, he focused on the tall island of rock in front of him. He grabbed an outcropping and began to climb. The men behind him made a grunting sound as he climbed, in time with one another, the last encouragement he would get until he emerged on the other side. Hand over hand, one toehold at a time, the boy ascended the rock. He saw the cave opening before he reached it, a black void in the bright moonlight. A natural ledge protruded from the cliff wall underneath the opening. He scrambled onto the ledge and stared into the cave-like rift in the cliff face which led to the underworld tunnels of Suknudero. No matter how long he stared, he could see nothing in the darkness. The boy entered. The air felt warmer than outside. It gave him a strange feeling, an otherworldly feeling, like he was entering a place of spirits and magic. The moonlight faded. Soon he could not see his hand in front of his face. The men of the village rarely talked about this place, but between them, the village children had heard bits and pieces and told each other rumors. "The tunnels are full of spirits," they would say. "The spirits live in darkness, waiting for the final winter, when they will emerge from their dens and prepare the land for rebirth." The boy scraped his hands against cold walls, feeling ridges, dimples, and depressions in otherwise flat stone. Arms fully outstretched, he could keep the palms of his hands against both walls. He felt something skitter over the back of his hand and jerked it away. Just a harmless lizard, he thought, or a bug. Nothing to be scared of. He kept going, saw light ahead, then entered a dimly lit cavern. Colorful drawings glowed like hot embers all over the room. Simple drawings that seemed to tell stories. In one drawing, many people gathered under a thing like a giant bird. Lines surrounded the bird, like flashes of lightning. Thunderbird, he guessed, from the stories his people told about the great and wild spirits of the world. In another drawing, people walked toward mountains. In the next, people were inside the mountains in caves. The last drawing was hard to make out. It had faded and was marked with symbols and dots and lines that held no meaning for the boy. The boy continued, leaving behind the cave of drawings. He did not know how long he walked in the dark, but many steps later, dim light met his eyes once more. He could just make out a smooth, straight pillar up ahead. The walls opened out into another room. this one perfectly round, with the pillar at its center. The light came from above, from holes in the ceiling, blue light like moonlit clouds. He could see 2 other rooms branching off from this one. He walked to the first room and looked in and gasped. Shapes like people stood against the walls. He froze, not daring to breathe. He noticed other ones lying on tables, attached to something like vines falling from the ceiling down to their chests. They were not like men or women he had ever seen. Much taller, they seemed carved from smooth rock or something like it. None of them moved. They were still, lifeless. He allowed himself to breathe in, out. Maybe these were the spirits he had heard about from the children in the village. Maybe they were asleep or hibernating. Lair of the idle spirits, he remembered. Now he understood the name. He watched for several more heartbeats, but saw no sign of movement. The spirits did not even breathe. He backed away, wanting to run, but forcing himself to stay calm and slow, as if he were hunting in the woods. Calm, slow. He decided to look in the other room too before he left. Carefully, quietly, he paced to the other room and looked inside. He froze again. A giant spider stared at him from just inside. He bit his cheek to keep from yelling out. The spider did not move, just stared. The boy did not move either. The spider was 2 or even 3 times as tall as the boy. Its legs were not as thin and sleek as a small spider's legs, its body not as smooth. As he stared at the spider's strange body, he heard a sound and looked up. Its eyes were open, glowing blue and blinking, looking right at him. The boy stopped breathing again. Strange, small noises came from the spider, like the noises of bugs in the undergrowth. Its eyes closed, the blue lights disappeared, and the spider became quiet again. The boy waited. Nothing more happened. He backed away from the idle spirits, calmed his breathing, then left the round room and continued onward. The next tunnel went on longer than the others had, or at least it felt that way. Silence and darkness engulfed him. He heard squeaks and chirps echoing along the passage. Faint at first, but the noises grew louder as he continued. He remembered what his father and his uncle always said. You do not reach a destination by sitting still. You reach it by putting one foot in front of the other. The sound of trickling water met his ears and grew in volume. He felt drops on his right hand. He was thirsty now and tempted by the water, but he did not know whether it was safe to drink. He did not wish to anger the spirits by taking anything from their domain, even a drink of water. The stories warned of such things. The next cavern, when he finally reached it, felt much larger than the other 2, like a world under the world. Sparkling lights covered the domed ceiling and walls, like gemstones reflecting the sun. He realized as he studied them, the tiny lights matched the pattern of the stars in the winter sky. He saw familiar constellations and clusters. A strong, pungent odor met his nose as he walked into the cavern. He heard noises like flapping wings and the same chirps and squeaks from the tunnel, louder now. A dark shape flew past. He ducked down and covered his head. The floor descended into the cavern, barely lit by the lights in the cave ceiling. He picked his way down a path between rocks and formations, deeper into the depths of the giant cavern. The path bottomed out, barely visible so far from the tiny starlights up above. He heard a small splash, the sound of tiny rippling waves, water nearby. He continued cautious with his steps, not wishing to plunge into any icy cold pools. Cave monsters and dark spirits flitted through his mind, lurking in the depths of the earth, waiting for unwary visitors. He pushed the thoughts away, one foot in front of the other. The path began to rise. He felt relief, but still the fear of creatures in the dark, watching, waiting, maybe even following, about to pounce, plagued his mind. Without warning, the noises of the cavern went quiet and the starlights vanished. All was dark and silent once more. The boy experienced the brief sensation of falling, then a sudden stop. His feet had not left the ground, but now his body fell to the ground and slid and rolled down a steep bit of tunnel, then onto a flat surface. He laid still, even more unsure of his bearings than before. Darkness, silence. He stood up and tested for walls, but did not feel any. He returned to the ground on hands and knees and crawled, anxious after the slide. He did not wish to be knocked off his feet again. He felt the air change once more, saw the faint lines of more glowing drawings. Closer, he saw they seemed not to tell a story this time, but to depict things from outside. The sun, flowers, a rainbow, grass, a river, strange animals. The end came quickly after. How long had he been walking? A full spring day? Half a day? 2? The bright light from outside hurt the boy's eyes. He shaded them with his hands. He stepped out onto a ledge into open air. Under and beyond the ledge, endless ocean. "Son!" The boy heard his father's voice from far below. He crouched down at the edge and looked over. Below and off to one side, the circle of men who had surrounded him before he entered, Suk Nudero stood on a thin strand of rocky beach. "Yes, father," he called. "Jump into the water." The boy looked down at the dark green-blue sea. Small waves rose and fell and crashed against the rocky shore. The ocean looked dangerous and cold and scary. He sometimes swam in the river near the village, close to the shore, but never in the wild ocean. He backed away from the edge. No crying, he told himself. No fear, no waiting. He took 3 running steps and lunged out into the blue-gray sky.